right, hello everyone. So welcome to the last little SEAL presentation here. As you just heard, this is about White Hat Safe Harbor. Two of us are actually last-minute replacements, so that should make this a bit more interesting. And we're just going to go ahead and do a quick round of introductions. I'll break the ice. I'm Kurt Berry, he, him. I have a few affiliations. I'm with SEAL. I'm a Spearbit lead security researcher. And I spent 4 years with MakerDAO as a protocol dev, where I was involved in some of the early safe harbor discussions, in fact. Robert?
So I'm Robert. I'm co-leading Safe Harbor Initiative at SEAL, and then I'm co-founding Skylock, which is another security startup that operates under the Safe Harbor Agreement.
Hey, I'm Charm. I do legal and operations in the crypto space. Helped get SEAL and the Safe Harbor off the ground, and I currently work with a Maker ecosystem actor.
Hey everybody, my name is Kurt Opsahl. I am a Associate General Counsel for Cybersecurity and Civil Liberties Policy with the Filecoin Foundation. I'm also on the board of the Security Researchers Legal Defense Fund, and prior to Filecoin, I was working at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, where I was there for close to 20 years, working on the Coders' Rights Project, trying to help defend security researchers when they got into trouble for their good faith security research.
All right.
Oh yeah.
So let's kick things off. Charm, what is White Hat Safe Harbor?
Yeah, so the White Hat Safe Harbor is a legal framework that can be deployed for protocols that might come under hacks, what we call exploits. And if during an exploit, a white hat swoops in, acts in line with the ethics and terms that are stipulated within that legal framework, then we essentially provide a best efforts, like to the max, legal protection, liability protection, and probability of reward for their awesome work and saving funds, and that's exactly what we're trying to encourage with it.
All right. Yeah, next question for all the panelists. What brought you into helping with this, and what interests or background made you uniquely qualified to give that help?
I mean, Hudson, who isn't here right now but is originally the panelist, is who brought me into this. I was working on Skylock, which is my startup originally, and we were trying to find a way where we could, if we detected a vulnerability that was in the mempool, we could reverse engineer that vulnerability, execute it ourselves, front-running the hacker, and then save the protocol funds. And we wanted to try and craft a legal document that would actually let us do that without it being theft. And Hudson gave me access to one of the very early versions of Safe Harbor, I think 3.01, although I might be wrong about that. And then I've been helping out on and off ever since. Yeah.
Wow. 3.01, we're on like 7 now. That's impressive.
The versions have ballooned. I imagine that Gabe is not happy about that.
So I came in actually under Gabe Shapiro, who is co-founder and most prominent architect of the Safe Harbor framework. At the time, I was working with this other entity, LexPunk, and SEAL saw what I was doing and was like, can you help carry this? And it was absolutely my pleasure. And yeah, that's what I've been doing with it, just helping flesh it out and get it ready to present to you all.
These guys have been incredible. They've donated hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours just to fixing the legal agreement and to building it and to creating all of the things that need to be done in order for it to work and to protect white hats.
It's a community effort.
It's incredible.
Okay, so I got into this space defending hackers, defending security researchers. And this is about a commitment that finding vulnerabilities, fixing those vulnerabilities, requires having good security research and requires a legal environment in which someone can conduct that research, find the vulnerabilities, talk about the vulnerabilities to get the problem solved. And we don't want to have legal constraints, whether it be civil lawsuits or criminal charges, to get in the way of making a more secure world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of times where either the companies involved, a vendor doesn't want their vulnerabilities to be exposed, and they threaten or even go after a security researcher for what they have found. There are times when prosecutors want to make a name for themselves and show how tough they are on hackers, but instead of going after bad faith actors, they find a good faith actor because they're easier to find and can try to cause trouble, try to cause interpretations of the law even when they're going after bad hackers that will have ramifications for a good faith actor. So trying to ensure the space so we can have stronger security, find, fix vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and I'll add that I was brought into the early safe harbor discussions to represent the sort of DeFi protocol side of things, because ultimately we want to make DeFi and other crypto protocols safer, but protocol's not going to add something that they worry could have potential negative edge case impacts, and so I came on and made sure that it was something that protocols would be happy to adopt. And kind of on that note, I'll open this kind of up to all the panelists to explain, how does white hat safe harbor work at a high level? Why do we need it? And who is it protecting? So I don't know, to say why we need it, maybe Kurt, you want to take that aspect?
Why do we need it? Well, at one level, a key aspect of any sort of anti-hacking law is access without authorization. And so one of the things that is trying to be solved with the White Hat Safe Harbor Agreement is authorization, having authorization ahead of time. These are the rules of the program. You abide by these rules. You go into there, and you are authorized to do so, taking away a key element of a claim against the security researcher. And by doing that ahead of time, it makes it harder for an upset person, a prosecutor, to bring charges, bring a lawsuit against the security researcher. And so we're doing it to create the space in which this can happen. And one of the biggest challenges, one of the things that makes this very interesting, is that for a lot of security research, it's done maybe on the side or not in a very public way, but when there is an active attack going on in a DeFi protocol, it's pretty public. Something is going on right now, and the time is super sensitive. It needs to be taken care of right now, because if you wait to go through process and get authorization and so on, the wallets may all be drained by the time you sort of get through that process into a good spot to try and do something about it. And so getting it in ahead of time, getting it signed up, getting the DAO or the governance body to adopt it beforehand protects you later.
I think that's beautifully put. To kind of jump off of that as well, the way that it works is for a given protocol or for a given instance, we go around to all of the people who might, again, as Kurt mentioned, under current hacking laws, under computer or security laws that exist as they are, just no sophistication. Like the ones in the United States were created under the Reagan administration, and they're like, if you access a computer, then you're hacking it, which, especially when somebody is having funds drained or exposed, they're not going to care who comes in and saves them. They just want that help. It's like you're asking for an ambulance. But as we have, these Good Samaritan laws that somebody can come and help you, and if you end up giving them a boo-boo, they can't sue you for the boo-boo while you were saving their life. In the same way, we say in this instance, hey, we've gone around ahead of time, made sure that all parties who could possibly act in that not so great faith way aren't going to have claims against you if you, a white hat, step in and actually save the day. Best efforts, do your thing here. We'll give you the information you need to execute. We'll let you know what to do with the funds, where to place them once you've recovered them. And we'll reassure you that if you do this, you'll probably get a pretty substantial reward. And having this all clarified ahead of time would release from doubt those who might hesitate. And as Kurt said, really the 11th hour, when if somebody's showing any sort of bend towards an action, it could cost potentially millions.
Yeah, I mean, building on Charm's point, like for the white hat perspective, the most important part about Safe Harbor in my mind is just how it's all standardized and how you can be confident in it. Once you understand how white hat works, we're being very pedantic, very certain that all of the different protocols that adopt Safe Harbor are going to adopt it in the exact same way, that all of the protections extended to the white hats are going to be the same protections no matter which protocol has adopted it. And that the information that the protocols have to provide, the asset recovery address, the bounty terms, any of the diligence requirements like KYC requirements, and all of the assets under scope, all of that is provided for the white hat, and it's provided for the white hat in the same way for every single protocol. So you as a white hat don't need to really care what the protocol that you're interacting with is. You mostly just need to care that they've adopted Safe Harbor and that there's an active exploit and that you can save them.
And I, just one more comment there. That's the real beauty in Gabe's work here is that this is a legal instrument. It's flexible in all the right ways, and it's standardized in all the right ways. In terms of adoption, there's many different ways we understand that. Like, not every crypto protocol out there is going to be the most pristine, like perfectly organized entity, lined up, blah, 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 blah. Whoever you are in the crypto space, you can use the White Harbor framework, and that's what makes it incredible, because on the one hand, in terms of adoption, we have, and with this has been so extremely vetted, so much flexibility. And on the other hand, we have standardization so that when it's go time, you can go into go mode. And I just admire it as kind of an object like that, or like it's almost an objet d'art, like damn.
Yeah, I like to think of Safe Harbor as kind of like an extension of the bug bounty program for a project where, if it's not under attack and nothing's going wrong, bug bounty is how you would report things, but if something is going wrong and there's not time to report and be like, hey, you might want to fix that, and you have to act immediately, White Hat Safe Harbor, creates this umbrella of protection for white hats to step in and take action and save funds, which, that is an action that is not without risk, right? It's not like just sending an email with a POC, right? Your transaction could get front run, and the generalized front running bot could end up with the funds that you were trying to white hat. And so you can never guarantee that everything's going to go perfectly. Obviously you should have the best of intentions, but with White Hat Safe Harbor, it's a scenario where something's gone wrong anyway, and you're at least going to try to help, and you can have a little bit of confidence, hopefully a lot of confidence, that you'll be protected for trying to do the right thing.
That's a really important thing to stress. Like, Safe Harbor does not apply universally. It doesn't just mean that white hats can now suddenly hack your protocol if they've discovered a vulnerability. It only applies in the event of an active exploit if the hacker has moved first. In basically all other cases, contact CO911, contact the bug bounty provider, contact the protocol directly, disclose the vulnerability responsibly. Safe Harbor is not the best approach in all circumstances. It's the best approach when you have no alternatives.
Right. It's seriously an emergency measure. It is highly compatible with all bug bounties. Like
Generally, we recommend for incentive compatibility that the reward for a Safe Harbor white hat not be greater than the reward for an equivalently bug reported through the bug bounty, so that you avoid an incentive for people to go and try to in a plausibly deniable fashion, create an incident that then they can white hat. So that's been thought about carefully.
It's been contentious.
Yeah. But so there are great limitations on when you can use it as a white hat. But then on a legal level, though, why should you trust it? Because I've just highlighted that things can go wrong and you can get blamed for them. So maybe this is a good one for Charm. Why can we trust it? Who looked it over? And who is it protecting exactly? And who is it protecting them from exactly as well?
So I'll start from the bottom on that. Who's it protecting us from? The meta is that it's protecting us from black hats. It's protecting us from losing funds and ultimately the reputation of this industry. Within the context of the Safe Harbor itself, it's protecting us from each other. A protocol can include bad actors in the legal context who you know, a lot of people here are just after their bags, no hate to that, but if you're driven by greed and you've recently suffered loss, you're going to go to any measure to make a recovery. And for some, it might seem ethical to them to target a person who was trying to help them. And it's even happened in the past. Like there's precedent for this, as awful as it sounds. And Safe Harbor kind of removes that from the landscape. It was a not so great feature, and again, a source of real hesitancy in situations of emergency. So yeah, it protects us from each other. And then in terms of like who's been on this, who's helped develop this, oh my God, it's more like who hasn't. I mean, we've had eyes from Australia. We've had eyes from your favorite VC. We've had eyes from the Department of Defense. And it's like, or excuse me, not DOJ, I can't confirm. I don't know about the other. But it's like, I can name a score of lawyers. Like the list would be like Santa's rolling off the stage here. It's been vetted. It's been battle tested. We have faced criticism. We have like put this through the paces, and I'm shocked that so many lawyers came together from every corner of the world and said, yeah, looks good to me. No comments, which if you've ever been doing legal work, no comments, yeah. That's the holy grail. And I've lost count of the holy grails, so that's my word on that.
Remarkable.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's entertain the scenario that something goes wrong, a protocol adopted Safe Harbor, but then after a white hat, acted, the protocol decided, you know what, we feel like prosecuting them anyway. Or maybe there was some user of the protocol that, felt that something wasn't done quite correctly and they bring suit. Or who knows, maybe a government just decides that it looks like a law was broken here, and so we're just going to prosecute everyone who participated in the hack, even if they weren't, even if they returned the funds, which governments do things like that sometimes. So, Kurt, what exists to help out in this case?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just start obviously the agreement has been vetted, put out there. We believe that it is really good. But if you work in the area of security, one of the things is you have to make sure that even if you think everything is fine, you got to also prepare in case it's not. And so one aspect of that, as I say, I'm on the board of the Security Researchers Legal Defense Fund, and we worked with SEAL on this to make sure that there are funds available to provide legal help if somebody gets in trouble for using this, for doing some good faith white hat work on a protocol, and nevertheless something comes up. Could that happen? Well, it's a tough thing when somebody loses a lot of money to a hack, and there are some bad faith actors that they can't find, there's no way of tracking them down, and then there are some good faith white hats who are presenting themselves to the world as having done this. Well, you got one target for your frustration and anger over what happened. And one of the things that unfortunately can happen is when people are frustrated, angry, and they've lost a lot of money, is they will lash out. A challenge is often where it is not a legal action that would have a very high chance of success. If we eliminated the access without authorization. But that does not stop someone from being able to threaten or even sue. That there are oftentimes where people are trying to do that as a way of intimidation, as a way of trying to put pressure on the other side in hopes that maybe that's a better bargaining position. They can do some compromising and such. And part of having the Legal Defense Fund as a resource is to help give confidence to people who want to do this. While it has been reviewed and vetted by a wide variety of people, so far it has not been challenged in a court, and it'd be good to have some lawyers, if it ever was challenged, to help with those arguments, to say why it is very good. And some of the scenarios that we were just talking about. So, a protocol denying, saying they repudiate the agreement seems unlikely, and that would be a particularly tough one to say, well, we agreed to this thing, but we no longer agree to it. But perhaps a member or a user of that protocol says, well, I didn't agree to this. This was done by some governance thing. I don't, agree with what the governance thing has done. You can't hold me to it. And then that would put to the test whether the governance mechanism was functional. Be good to have some legal help in that scenario. And also for criminal charges, the victim does not have to agree. The governments can press charges for alleged crimes, even if the victim is like, no, I don't want you to press charges. Usually they don't. Usually it is a victim who is cheerleading and pushing pressure to do it, but it doesn't always have to be that way. So it is good to have, as in case of emergency, break glass, and if it happens, reach out to the Security Researcher Legal Defense Fund, and for that matter, the Security Researcher Legal Defense Fund works for all sorts of security. So if you're doing something independent of the White Hat Safe Harbor, but are doing some good faith security research and get in trouble for it, also feel free to reach out to the Security Researcher Legal Defense Fund.
If I could roll off one thing that Kurt said there, the safe harbor might seem it operates as kind of from a place of cynicality about the people involved. What it's really doing is it's not about the people involved so much as like the courts that you might face afterward. Like, am I really going to end up being indicted and then found in the wrong for trying to help somebody? Is that where our legal system is at? No, but even being yanked into the civil system, like even being hit with a lawsuit from one of these people who, yeah, those are the people we're getting a little cynical about. Because again, you find this greed drive sometimes in crypto, we all know it. We're taking away their ability to even harass you, the white hat, so that you can go forward, do your thing, use that talent that we know you have to actually get something done here that's going to save a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, the way I see it, the SLRDF exists because the white hats are the ones that are taking on the risk in Safe Harbor. For a protocol, if you adopt Safe Harbor, worst case scenario, nothing really changes. You get hacked. Like, Black Hat's not going to operate under Safe Harbor, and if they do, then it's not going to apply. But for the white hats, if, like Kurt and Charm said, if a bad protocol or if a mad protocol user comes after you, you are taking on a lot of risk there. And SLRDF at least makes me a lot more confident that I would not face that alone, that I would not go bankrupt or I would not be ruined just by a single mad actor after I tried to help them.
Now, on that note, Safe Harbor doesn't get used if projects don't adopt it, which is its own battle. Now, Robert, you've been a huge help with driving adoption and getting projects to get on board. What are the non-legal, technical, and on-chain components of doing this?
I mean, the on-chain components are really the on-chain registry and then all of the corresponding protocol adoptions. So the protocol adoptions are basically just on-chain records of the details that the protocols use to adopt Safe Harbor. So that's the stuff that I mentioned before, the stuff that's standardized. It's the assets under scope, it's the KYC terms, it's the bounty terms, and it's the asset recovery address, the place where you return funds if you've recovered any. And protocols deploy this on-chain, and then white hats can see, or any white hat can see it just by querying the chain. And then the second part is the on-chain registry, which basically just, it's a smart contract factory for the different adoption details. It just keeps track of all of the different protocols that have adopted Safe Harbor and has a mapping of the protocol addresses, or the protocol's adoption addresses to the actual adoption details.
Yeah, so that's kind of technically what happens. Charm, is there anything else the protocol needs beyond these technical components? Like how does a DAO that doesn't have a legal entity adopt an agreement?
Oh, all right. Yeah, so what we do here is we essentially have a process for the DAO to implement a governance vote. And we say, this is one of the like striking parts of the safe harbor, is we say if this governance vote passes, then the DAO and everybody who's part of it, that amorphic group that has given legal minds so much trouble, we say, whatever you end up being, if you're classified as purple, green, or whatever color under the legal rainbow, it doesn't matter. You consent to this agreement because it passed under your governance system. Therefore, the white hat is protected when they swoop in and save the day. There's different configurations. Again, the flexibility that the white hat safe harbor framework has in terms of adoption is really remarkable. So I can assure virtually any configuration that you're bringing to the adoption process is going to be compatible with minimal imagination. We have templates and guidelines for whatever you are, and it's fairly easy to follow them. If there are actually legal persons who are coming to the table, you can just have them sign on the dotted line. Otherwise, if you're providing a product or service to other people, add it to your terms of service so that users are made aware that as they're engaging with your product or service, they're also agreeing to allow these white hats to do their jazz. We've been very thorough. We've accounted for most everything.
Yeah, is it fair to say that we've done everything we could to make it easy to adopt?
Absolutely. And we're ironing out kinks yet. I always love highlighting that this is a community effort, and it is to the very last. And that really shows in the mindfulness of the document.
One fun thing that I forgot to mention, but it's kind of an intersection between the legal aspects and the on-chain aspects, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for the DAOs, the actual on-chain transaction to the smart contract registry is the legally binding action that they take to adopt safe harbor. And I know that Gabe, I think he's the one who came up with this.
Yeah.
He is very interested in this idea, and he's like working on it a lot, that the on-chain transaction that you execute can be a legally binding action. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of other stuff that comes out in the next couple of years that uses this same legal principle to start to combine the traditional legal agreements with more on-chain registry stuff.
A lot of theory behind that. Yep. Attestation.
Yep. Great answers. Question for Kurt. You've been in this security researcher protection business for a long time. I'm wondering if you have some examples from your past experience to just highlight, why this matters, why it's important, and how it helps.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in this a long time. I have seen things. It is, it's actually improved quite a bit over the time. There was a lot of misunderstanding. You were saying the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is the U.S. anti-hacking law, came from the Reagan era. Just a little side story on that. As the story goes, Reagan watched the movie War Games, which involved hacking into the nuclear defense system. And that inspired him to promote and eventually sign the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Going at it with a movie-level understanding of what it could be. But over the years, in the early days, there was just a lot of challenges when industries were being confronted with security research that made them look bad. They got popped. They didn't like to see that and wanted to take it out on the researcher and doing things, suing them, threatening suit at least at a minimum, trying to silence the effort. And there also had been some prosecutors who took things that shouldn't have been cases and brought them anyway for their own political careers. A lot of prosecutors in places are often elected officials and such. So one prominent example is Aaron Swartz, who went into MIT, was lawfully entitled to download some academic articles, under as a student there. Went into a networking closet and attached his laptop with a cable to do it, faster than they were anticipating, and perhaps more than they were anticipating. But I don't think that should have been a crime because he was authorized to get those articles, and they hadn't anticipated that it would be done so fast. But nevertheless, a prosecutor went after him, and Aaron was facing up to 35 years in prison for having done so. The organization that who had these academic journals, after a lot of public pressure, said, this is fine. We don't have a complaint with this, but nevertheless, the prosecution continued. Unfortunately, this led to Aaron taking his own life. So we never found out how that case would have ended up, and we lost one of the greats in both the open source movement and doing security research. And so this is sort of a bad place where things started out. For a long time, the DOJ was also taking some very tough interpretations of terms of service, so that with the assumption that if a term of service said, you are not authorized to access our site under these conditions, then that was access without authorization, and thus it was criminal. And just to give you a notion of how ridiculous that is, at the time that we were doing some litigation around this, put an anecdote before the court that 17 magazine, which is a magazine that is only read mostly by people under 17, had a term of service saying you must be 18 or older to access this website. So basically their entire audience, under the DOJ's interpretation, were felons, accessing without authorization, hacking it by typing in 17magazine.com into a browser, push and return. And so this is some of the bad places where it's gone. But I say it has gotten better. Most technically sophisticated companies are open to security research now. Bug bounty programs have become commonplace. And essentially what the White Hat Safe Harbor is an extension of the idea of a bug bounty program to a high tempo, immediate action scenario versus a slower one, but it is an extension of that idea, and so this is moving it forward. But still we have some problems. Just this summer, I was at the DEF CON security conference, and then ended up getting pulled into representing a speaker there who got a cease and desist the night before a talk was scheduled to stop the talk by the manufacturer. So he was done some research and discovered flaws in these electronic locks, and had done the testing on locks that he lawfully bought and owned the locks themselves. So if anyone was to authorize any hacking on those computers, and the definition of computers is broad enough to encompass basically anything that might be considered a computer except pocket calculators. And that's longer story on that. But in any event, he owned the locks, he was authorizing to do it, but they nevertheless, they brought suit. They brought a whole bunch of ridiculous claims that would have basically totally lost in court. But there you are, the night before your talk, getting this letter. Anyway, so it did work out. We responded to them, ended up delaying the talk to give some time to have the conversations, and they eventually withdrew their threats, the thing was resolved peacefully. The talk went forward with the security research, but like I was saying, that it was still happening.
Yep, and so it's a lot of good examples of how security researchers have gotten in trouble for a lot less than maybe moving a few $1 million on chain and
Just a few
in an
million.
unexpected fashion. All right, I want to be mindful of the time because we're getting close to the end here. Robert, to date, how many projects have signed up for White Hat Safe Harbor, and where should teams go to get started on implementing it?
I mean, we've got 5 protocols so far. Balancer, I think, being the most recent one. And if you want to, thank you. And if you want to adopt it, then contact myself, contact Dixon, who's in the audience. He is the one who is the real wizard behind all of the protocol adoptions. And yeah, like we've said before, it's pretty easy for protocols to adopt Safe Harbor. If you're a DAO, it goes through the DAO process. If you have Immunify, you can adopt using Immunify. If you are a regular protocol, then like Jerome said, it's as easy as just signing a legal agreement. And when you do that, you are giving white hats the opportunity to protect you if everything else goes wrong. If there's a vulnerability in your code that wasn't caught by the auditors, that wasn't reported to a bug bounty, and that is discovered by a black hat if you've got some 0-day, then we're not saying that it's going to stop the 0-day, but we're saying that there is a much better chance that you're going to get your money back and that your users are going to stay protected.
A frequent criticism of white hat safe harbor is that the scope is so narrow, only attacks that are in progress, and most attacks are one transaction, all the funds are stolen. So how would you answer to that criticism of like, well, maybe the set of times that this actually gets invoked is close to 0?
There's a thing to be said for how safe harbor could be expanded, where if a white hat finds a vulnerability and can't contact the protocol or can't responsibly disclose it, then they might want to be able to exfiltrate the funds and return them to users. And there's definitely, I think, a path where safe harbor could grow to encompass that sort of stuff. But right now, we wanted to start off with what is most explicitly something that white hats should be able to do. Like safe harbor exists, like Kurt said, it exists kind of as an offshoot of bug bounties, and it only really exists because in crypto we have the opportunity where we can see what the hackers are going to do, or what they already have done, and we have time to react to it. On Ethereum, you've got, 12 seconds in the block time. If a transaction shows up in the mempool, you've got maybe 6 seconds to respond to it. Or if the hack occurs, it's not behind some closed doors inside of a bank system, it's on-chain for everybody to see.
And some attacks do fall into this category of there are multiple actions taken repeatedly. Yeah. The classic example of this is actually the Nomad attack, which was one of the sort of main motivating things behind it. Yes, safe harbor could definitely be useful even in this initial form, which was where basically there was a way to steal money from this bridge, and there was an initial transaction that then started being copied and replicated all over the place, and some white hats participated, but there are also many other white hats who were sitting there watching it happen and saying, well, I could save some funds, but I might also put myself at risk, and if I don't take any action, I'm not in any risk, so I'll just sit it out. And,
exactly.
It's maybe not all hacks and vulnerabilities are like that, but there are definitely ones that exist of that nature. And so I think if you can add this and get marginally more protection at basically no downside risk, still valuable.
You might have feeding frenzies, like exactly as you described. You might have an instance where a mempool bot detects that a transaction is in the mempool and then front runs it. You might have an instance where someone deploys a smart contract and you can tell that that smart contract is going to be used in a malicious way. I know that there's a few people here actually who are working on that sort of tech. There's a bunch of different applications. About 50% of exploits as of 2023 were code-related exploits, and most of those would be applicable for safe harbor.
I just wanted to add, it is part of a sort of suite of best practices.
Yeah.
So, you also want to have a bug bounty program, so you find the vulnerability before anyone's actively using it. You want to have audits, so you find the vulnerability before anybody in a bug bounty finds it. You want to do, secure by design coding so that the audit doesn't catch it, and so on. So go all the way back the chain, but you also need that thing at the end of the chain if the other checks haven't worked so far, and somebody has to. You're talking about this very short decision time period. And if they don't have confidence that they're not going to go to jail or get sued to oblivion for taking an action, then they might not take it, and then the money is gone, and we have yet another horrible story, and a lot of people are upset. So giving people some confidence when they have to make a very tight time period decision, good or bad, should I do this? Will it work out? You want them to have the confidence to go for it, save as much money as can be saved. And that is the purpose of the safe harbor.
Music.
Well said.
And
I think we're slightly over time, so I want to be respectful of all the speakers later in the day and lunch and all of that. So if you have any questions about safe harbor, come find any of us panelists or other SEAL people afterwards, and we'll be happy to talk to you about it.
We've all got these lovely blue shirts.